Hello, today we're going to make this adorable little barn owl hanging decoration. So he's pretty easy to make. We're going to learn some new techniques. We're going to plant some fur. We're going to use a reverse needle. And then we're going to mount him onto this little wood slice with a bit of ribbon. So let's have a look at what we're going to need. So we're going to need a core wool bat. Don't need as much as this, but this is the whole bat that I use. It's a Perendale natural white carded bat from World of Wool. You're also going to need a beige colour. This is dark fawn, also from World of Wool, and that is a carded sliver. I'm also using this light brown from World of Wool. I don't know what it's called. I think it might be mouse, but I got that in a mixed bag, so I'm not entirely sure what that one is specifically called. You're going to need a light grey, only a tiny amount, not this much. I think I got this one from Adelaide Walker, but I could be mistaken. You're going to need a little bit of pink. This colour is mink from World of Wool. That's also a carded sliver. Then you're also going to need some eyes. These are about 10 millimeters, so they're a centimetre, quite a large eye. Need a wood slice, a cookie cutter, an awl for inserting the eyes, some glue also for the eyes, and also to attach this to the wooden base at the end. I use this Bostik all-purpose. And we're also going to need some pastels. Don't worry if you don't have those. There are other ways of doing what we need to do with them. It's just to add a little bit of the depth around the eyes there. A little bit of those pale tones. So that's what you need, and let's get going. So we're going to start with the cookie cutter. This one is about 8 centimeters in diameter, and the wood slice is about 10 centimeters. So you just want it so it's maybe just a little bit smaller than your wood slice. Doesn't matter too much. We can build things up or felt them down. But we're going to start off with that, and if you just take a really nice big chunk of that core wool, so it's just a natural white core wool. Right, so just grab that and just pull it apart a little bit. I'm just picking out any big bits of vegetable matter there. They're just little bits of hay or grass that have got caught in the wool when it's been on the sheep. So just fluff it up nicely and then really fold it over and just push it into that cookie cutter. And you want it so it comes more or less to the top. Then take a thicker needle. This is a 36 gauge triangular, and just start to give that a good felt all over, so it stops trying to pop back out of the cookie cutter. Don't worry too much at this point about getting it flat or firm. We're just trying to get it to hold together, so when you let go of it, that's not going to pop back out over the top. And you just want to go all the way over and just really start to get that to knit together. Once you feel that starting to come together on that side, just take it out of the cookie cutter, flip it over, and then squidge it back in, and just do exactly the same on the other side. You can also go around the edges a little bit and start to shape that into more of a circle. So you're just going to keep doing this, felt it on one side, flip it over, felt it again, flip it over, until we're starting to get a nice firm shape. Now I'll just zip ahead a little bit. Now once that's starting to really firm up and come together, I'm just switching to the clover tool because that's got 2 needles in it and it just really speeds up the process. And I'll let you just have a watch of me doing that now. I'm just going to continue doing the same, just felting it down, firming it up, then flipping it over and doing the same with the other side until I feel that we've got a nice firm shape. So when you feel that that's felted enough, it should be about half the depth that it was when you started. Just take it out, have a little look, and you'll see that it's still fluffy around the edges there. So you just want to get, I'm using 2 coasters here, but you can use coasters, bits of cardboard, whatever you've got really. And I'm just taking my 2 needles in the clover tool and I'm just going to work all the way around the edge there. Just be really careful though not to lose that round shape. Just follow the contours that you've already created and just go all the way around, felting in all those little fluffy bits. Now this disc that we're making at the moment doesn't have to be a super firm felt. Just as long as it's firm-ish. That's the only way I can put it, firm-ish. We need to be able to plant some fur into it, but at the same time it has to be firm enough that we can also reverse felt it. If you've not come across reverse felting before, we're going to do that with a reverse needle. And basically you need to have a firm core because then you're going to pull the fibres back out. You might see people mention that they should be tennis ball firm, but we're not going to go that far with this. You want it with a little bit of squish left in it, otherwise you are really going to struggle putting in the eyes and planting that fur in a little bit. Once you've gone all the way around there, just put your coasters to one side, just giving that a little bit of a squish, see how it's doing. And then just take your wood slice and just make sure that's roughly the right size. We don't want it to go all the way to the edge, so that's good for me. And now I'm just going to start to shape it a bit because we actually want it more of a dome shape. So we want this a little bit more rounded rather than a flat edge around the outside. So if you just take your double needles there, or whichever needles you're working with, you don't have to be exactly the same as me because we've all got our own preferences. And you're just going to start working around the edge and just gently felting down towards the bottom so that you create a more of a sloped shape coming up from that bottom edge onto the top. So it's a dome rather than a flat disc like we have been felting. So you should be able to see now that that is a nice domed shape. And we've got rid of those straight edges around the outside. So next we're just going to mark out the face using the needle. So I'm just marking where I want that to go. So I'm just going to mark, this is going to be the dip in the middle of the heart shape at the top. And then straight down from there at the bottom, that's going to be the little point at the bottom of the face. And I'm just going to draw a little heart shape into the wool. So going up and around at the edges and then curving it around. And then you're just nipping it in at the bottom to create a bit of a heart shape. And then just do exactly the same on the other side. And hopefully you'll have a nice symmetrical heart shape, which is easier said than done sometimes. But don't worry too much because you can always change it. Wool's quite a forgiving medium, so if you do it a little bit wrong, you can see mine's not 100% symmetrical at the top, so I do give it a little bit of an extra poke and just blend that in a bit. Now, you don't have to do this bit, but I'm just going around that with a felt tip pen so it shows up a little bit better on camera, because obviously it's white wool and it's just blending into the background there. So I'm just marking that on. You can do this if you want, and then it's easier to see. You're going to cover it up with wool so you won't see it anyway. So whatever you want to do at this point, do or don't, it's up to you. Now we're going to start adding the eyes. So first of all, I'm just making some little indentations with my fingers where I want those eye sockets to go. And then just start to felt into those indentations if you're happy with the positioning. You want to try and make them level with each other and have an even gap at either side between the eye and the edge of the wool circle. Also try to make them roughly the same depth, just so we don't end up with wonky eyes. The eyes that I'm using here are actually safety eyes, but we don't need the safety backs to them because we're just going to glue them in. So they've actually got a screw on the back and they're quite chunky. So when you take your roll, it's good to use a tape at all like the one I'm using rather than one of the little thin ones that's the same length all the way up, because you want to poke it in and you want to give it a good wiggle around so you can get that through the wool. And this is why I was saying not to felt it too firmly, otherwise you're not going to be able to get those thick eye stems all the way through at this point. You're going to end up with quite a bit of resistance, and it just makes your life that little bit harder when you're trying to put the eyes in. Now you just want to make sure that you're happy with the positioning before you glue them, because once they're glued, there's no going back. So I think I'm quite happy with that. So this is the glue that I use. It's a Bostik all-purpose glue. I'm sure there are other glues available, but it's the one that I've always used. And you just want to put a little bit of that glue. You don't need a huge amount, and just put a little bit on the stem back of those eyes. Then take out the awl, give it a wiggle and just reinsert those eyes and give it a good push down. Then just do the same with that second one. If you don't have access to these kind of eyes, you can just felt the eyes on, but I just find that a plastic eye or a glass eye gives it a little bit of a glint and just makes it come alive a bit. I did get these eyes in a big pack from Amazon. I'll see if I can find a link and I'll pop it in the description. So next we're going to make the beak, and I'm just going to refer to my prototype. Here's one I made earlier. So we're going to do a little pointy beak, and we're going to make this purely out of wool. I did think about using polymer clay, but this is needle felting, so let's make it out of wool. So just take a toothpick or a cocktail stick, whatever you call them, And then we want to take a small chunk of the grey wool. It's just a grey carded bat, this one. So take a little chunk of that and an equal chunk of the light brown carded sliver. Just a nice pinch of that. And we're just going to blend them together with our fingers. So you just pull them apart, lay them back on top of each other, pull them apart, do it again. Pick out any little bits that you find. And just get the two colours nicely blended together so it's a nice even tone through the wool. Now I'm just taking about half of that wool and just pulling the fibres out a little bit, and then just start to wrap that really tightly around the cocktail stick. Just wrap it around one end, pinch that bit in your fingers, and then start to work it down. And you want it so the bit nearest your fingers is a bit fatter, and it's going to taper down to a point at the other end. And just take a fine needle and just start to give that a bit of a poke. Just rotate the cocktail stick as you felt it, and you'll get a nice even felt all the way around. And just do that until it's all holding together. Now I want that to be just a little bit thicker at the top, so I'm just going to take that other half of the wool, wrap it around the top edge, and just build that up a little bit in the same way. Just wrap it around as tight as you can, and then felt that in with your fine needle. Now once you've felted that through, just slide it off the end of the stick and give it a little poke in the ends there if there's little fluffy bits. And then you just want to place it onto the owl's face there. Make sure it's in the right position. You want it so the beak is maybe about 5mm from that point at the bottom. And you want to get it as central as you can. In hindsight, watching this back, mine is slightly off to the left, but never mind. He turns out fine in the end. So you want to put that on and just give it a good poke around the edges. Don't felt it through the middle, otherwise you'll flatten it off and you want it to be 3D and sticking out. So just go around the edges. I'm using a 40 gauge spiral needle, and that knits it in really nicely and attaches it quite firmly to that base. If you're still watching my video at this point, I would really love it if you could give me a thumbs up. Any likes or comments on my channel means that it gets shown to other people and it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and it just gives me that little bit of encouragement to keep making these tutorials for you. Also, if you're not already subscribed, just click the subscribe button at the bottom, and it's completely free, and it means you'll see whenever I upload a new tutorial. And again, that really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Now we just want to build up the nostrils at the top of the beak. So if you just take a little pinch of that mink carded sliver, or whichever pink colour that you have, and we just want not even that much, just a tiny amount, and just roll that into a little ball. And then just give that a little bit of a poke on your felting mat to start to bring it together. And I'm just pulling that a little bit so it fits right across the top of the beak there, and start felting that in. And just felt it over the top, trying to hide the join. Oh, did that far too high. If you do that, just pull it off, reposition it, and then just felt it back in again. I just realised that the beak was too long and it was going to be too close to the eyes. So I just moved that down and just refelted that in again. So I'm just giving that a good felt all over the top of the beak just to get it nice and smooth and to try and hide that join as much as I can. So this is what he should look like at this point. He's looking a little bit weird, but it's a trust the process moment. Once we add the fur on, he's going to look much better. Just going to give that one last poke all over there. And as you can see, that's a nice round shape from the side. So now we're just going to give him a couple of little nostrils. So just poke some little holes just in either side there. And you want those to be just inside the pink bit, above the line between the grey and the pink. Just make sure they're nice and evenly spaced. Now, I forgot to mention at the beginning, we just need a tiny little bit of a darker brown wool. I was originally going to use the light brown wool for this, but I realised it didn't show up. So just take a tiny amount, just a few fibres of dark brown or a black wool, and just felt that into the nostrils on either side. You want it to be a recess into the wool, so there's actually a little hole there. And just get into that tiny amount, it's really just a few fibres, and do the same on the other side there. Just a tiny ball, and then felt that into the nostril. I hope you can see that there. It's just two little dark nostrils there. That's how you want it to look. So now we're on to the fun part. We're going to start planting fur around the outside just to create a ruff. You can see on this one I've made before. So it's a dark fawn colour, and we're going to put little grey speckles through. If you've ever seen a barn owl, they have those little grey speckles through the top of their head. So you just take a chunk of your dark fawn here. Now these bits are a bit long, so I'm just going to snip them in half. We're going to cut it down anyway, so don't worry about having cut ends on your wool. So I'm just going to get another little felting pad. It's just one of the little ones you get with a kit. Just use that so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to felt a line across the top of the head. So just fluff out your wool there. And you want it so the centre is the bit that you're going to felt through. So just zoom in a bit there. So we're going to felt through the centre of that in a straight line. All the way across. And you want to make sure it's really tacking in quite firmly, so it's nice and secure. You might want to use a thicker needle if you don't feel like it is secure. That's what I'm doing there. And then just fold the top half down and felt along the seam again. Just different needle. And we want that nice and secure. There we go. Now just take your scissors and just trim that down. I think mine was about 1 centimetre long, but you can just judge how short or how long you want that. And you want to trim that away from the face and towards the ends of the wool, and it just gives you a nice little gradient and makes it look nice and natural. There he is, looking like a little punk at the minute. And then we're just going to take the pen again, and I'm just going to mark where I want to put the little grey dots in. Hope you can see that. So I'm going to do 4 little grey dots across the top of the head, and I'm just going to plant that right next to the wool I've already planted in. You don't have to draw that on with pen, but it does help. Just keeps you right. So just take a little bit of wool there, a little bit of the grey wool, give it a twist, And we're just going to do exactly the same thing and just plant it into that spot. Just poke it halfway through, fold it over and give it another little poke there. And we're going to do the same there for all 4 of those dots. Now just grab your scissors and just trim those ends down to the same length as the rest of the hair. Well, I guess the feathers really, because it's a bird, but this is done in the same way that you would do fur. So that's how we're going to build up the layers. I hope you can see that on camera, it's showing up all right. So now we're just going to add a couple more layers and work our way forwards until we meet his little widow's peak at the top of the heart shape. So this is all done in the same way. The only thing is, with the little grey spots, I alternated them. So this one there's 4, the next row there's only 3, and they're in between the dots in the row behind it. So I hope that makes sense. Just fast forward through this next bit and hopefully you'll see what I mean. So I hope that makes sense and you can see where we're going with this now. So now we're going to go along the sides of the face, again using the dark fawn colour, and we're just going to do it in exactly the same way. Although we aren't going to add any more grey, that was just for the top of the head. So I'll just fast forward through this again and give you some nice relaxing music to listen to. just going to go around the bottom of the face. Oh, we had dusty eyes there. I'm going to go around the bottom of the face, and this time we're going to use the white carded core wool that we used to make the initial disc shape, and just do it in the exact same way. So I've just trimmed that down so it follows the shape at the bottom of the face there. We will trim it a little bit shorter once we're done, but I'm just tacking that all down, tidying it up. And now we're ready to move on to the face. So at the moment the face is a little bit flat, so we just need to build up the contours around the eyes and on the nose. Well, is it a nose? The bit that comes down to the beak, that bit, you know what I mean. So we're just going to take a chunk of the core wool and just roll it in your hands until it starts to turn into a bit of a sausage, and then give that a bit of a felt through. Give it another roll, and then we're just going to felt that around the eye, and we're going to start building up a bit of a contour. So we don't want to felt it flat. You want to felt it around the edges and make it more of a curved contour, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. So doing this is hopefully going to build up the eye sockets and the cheeks, and then we're going to move on to that bit leading down to the beak, because that's quite prominent on a barn owl if you look at a picture. And we do need to felt this quite firmly. You need to make sure it is firmly felted down, because when we start reverse felting the face, it's going to want to pull away. And you will see when we get to that point, some of it does start pulling away, and I have to felt it back down because I haven't felted it enough. I think because I was filming, I was rushing a little bit, but you'll see what I mean when we get there. So I'm just going to continue building up those contours around the eyes, and adding an extra layer because it wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite deep enough. But we'll just fast forward through this a bit, and hopefully you'll see what I'm doing. So next we're going to take another chunk of wool and we're going to create a little pillow and build up the space between the eyes leading into the beak. Now this is what I mean, you just sort of roll it up like this and then felt into it so it makes a little pillow of wool. And we're just going to peel that off our mat. In just the same way you've done around the eyes, just try and build that up between the eyes leading down to the beak. Don't really know what you would call that area, sort of the bridge of the nose, but it doesn't have a nose. So whatever that's called on a barn owl, if you know, leave it in the comments. And we're just going to felt that down. Again, make sure it's nice and securely attached, so when we reverse felt, it's not going to pull it back off again. Now I'm going to take another piece of wool and separate it into 2 equal pieces and just create another little pillow to build up the cheeks a bit there. So you want to felt that right up under the eye and along the side of the beak, just to give the cheeks a little bit more fullness. And make sure when you're building up the face, you still stick slightly to that dome shape. You don't want to felt any of this too flat. You want it to dome down towards the edges and work those contours so the face looks more 3D. Now I realised at this point that I didn't like that hard line between the 2 different shades of wool, so I've just taken a tiny amount here of the dark fawn colour and I'm just going to felt just a small amount, just a very thin layer over the top of that join, just to blend the 2 colours together a little bit so it looks a bit more natural. Then just trim that down just to match the rest. And then just do the same on the other side, and you can see that that's blending the 2 colours together. And you've just got a bit of a natural gradient there rather than one colour abruptly stopping. And just give that another little trim. So that's it for planting the fur. You've got your nice little ruff around the barn owl's face there. And now we're going to move on to creating the line around the face. So if you take, just zoom in a bit there so you can see better. Now if you take the light brown colour and just tear yourself off quite a long thin piece, and you just want to twizzle it between your fingers so it becomes like a string, like a twisted string, and just attach it at the bottom of the face there, the little point of the heart. And start to felt it in and keep twisting it around and just keep the tension on that string of wool. Just work your way up and around the face. This is where it really helps to felt that line in around the face, and you just follow it around and you can't go wrong. Sorry about that siren in the background there. I think an ambulance must have been going past the house while I was recording. I didn't realise at the time. So I'm just giving that just another little felt there, make sure it's all firmly felted down. A little bit coming away around the eye there. And we're just going to do exactly the same around the other side of the face. Just get yourself another little strip of wool, pull it apart a little bit, and then just twizzle it. Then just attach that string at the bottom and just go around again exactly as you did for the first side. Can be a little bit fiddly twisting this string around and trying to keep it twisted as you felt it down. You might be better off rotating the barn owl in a different direction. I think I was really trying to do this against the direction I would usually do it, but I was trying to get it on camera, so I hope you can see what I'm doing. And just bring that string around the top and get it to meet in the middle. I think I was missing just a little bit, so I've just added another little bit around the top there just to bridge that gap. And there he is. That's how he should look like at this point. I hope you can see the contouring on the face there. Built up between the eyes and around the edges, and then just some little puffy cheeks. So now it's on to the reverse felting. You need a reverse felting needle, and if you've never used one before, it's the opposite of a regular felting needle. The ones from Heidi Feathers are these orange ones. So the barbs are the opposite way around and will pull the fibres back out. So we're going to start just above the eye there, along the outside line, and you just want to insert the very, very tip of the needle and very gently start pulling those fibres back out towards you. And you want to pull them out from the eye to the outside of the face. So we're just going to go along line by line, similarly to how you planted the wool. Just going to go a row at a time and keep moving forward towards the eye and just fan that out over towards the edge of the face. I hope that makes sense. I hope you can see what I'm doing there. But it's really a good idea to just go gently with this. Don't poke the needle all the way through the wool, because it's going to get stuck and it's probably going to snap off inside your felted piece. Just using those last couple of barbs right at the tip is a much better way to go. Just go gently and take your time with it. I'm just going to time lapse through the next little bit, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. Just working my way from the outside in, rotating and doing the same again. Now this is what I mentioned before. Some of the wool started to pull away a little bit around the eyes, so I just had to felt that back down. But that's easy enough to do. So I'll just speed through this next little bit. I hope that all made sense. So it's all just going from the centre to the outside. We're going to leave the nose for a second, what I'm calling the nose anyway. And we're just going to trim down the fluff around the outside of the face. You want it to be just to that line that we've felted, that heart-shaped line around the face. But if it goes a little bit over, you can just felt it in. So I'm taking it as close as I can without taking it too short, and then I just took those little edges in with a needle. So next we're going to reverse felt the nose, and you want it to come together from the eyes towards the centre so it comes to a peak. So I'm just felting a line up the centre of the nose as a guide. So I know on either side of the nose I don't want to go past that line. So now take your reverse needle and just start working from that centre line, pulling it towards the centre of the nose and working your way down in rows towards the eye. And they should start to meet in a peak in the middle once you've felted both sides. If you take a look at a picture of a barn owl, you'll see what I mean. They've got that nice peak between the eyes. Just rotate that round and do the same just from the centre line, just holding those other bits of fluff out of the way with my fingers there. Just pulling that towards the centre and away from the eye. Just push them together, create that nice peak. And just trim that down. And you can just take a regular needle and just felt it into place. Just help create that shape. And then I'm just going over it one more time with a regular needle, just defining around the beak and making sure that all those fibres are laying in the right direction. And here he is. I think he's looking pretty adorable there. I hope yours is starting to look somewhere similar. And I hope you can see how those fibres are supposed to be laying. It's really difficult filming white wool on a cream background. Should maybe think about getting a different coloured felting pad for doing light work, and this is one I made earlier. So I'm sure you can see on this one that it's got a little bit of pastels around the eyes just to create those soft tones. So that's what we're going to do next. So these are a set of skin tone pastels that I got from the Works. They're, I think, £4 there, not very expensive. And we're just going to go for this light brown colour at the end. So I'm just using a Q-tip and I'm just starting to scrape some away. They're quite hard, so they're not powdery to start with. You really need to scrape some up. You can use your fingernail, or you can use I wouldn't use a felting needle, but you could use a sewing needle to do that. And then just come in with a paintbrush. Oh no, that's me scraping some more. Now I come in with the paintbrush and just pick up a little bit of that powder and start applying it in a line from the eyes down towards the beak. Oh, there, I'm using my nail. The Q-tip just wasn't cutting it. So just get yourself a little bit of powder there. Pick it up and just very lightly, you just want to work light layers because you don't need this to be a heavy colour. Like applying eyeshadow, you just want it to be nice and subtle. So I hope that's showing up. We're just going around the eye and then just that line down towards the beak. Now I'm just wiping the dust off the eye there, because it does make things a little bit dusty. And there, I hope you can see, hope that's showing up well on camera. Just using the back of my needle there to try and scrape some more up. And just continuing to work around that eye. And once you're happy with that, just do exactly the same on the other side. Just creating that line and then working around the eye. And just try and get it looking the same as the first one with the same amount of powder. I'm just going to give those eyes another little wipe there, get all the powder off them. And I did think that it was a little bit pale still, so I'm just going to go in with a second colour, a slightly darker brown. And we're just going to build up those shadows around the eye a bit more. And I'm using my scissors this time to scratch up some of that pastel. I think I've used every single sharp thing I own, but just goes to show, just use whatever you've got. And we're just going to work round on top of the layer we've already applied and just create a bit more definition there. So now I'm just giving those eyes a final little wipe and going over once more with my needle just to tidy up any fibres that have moved while I've been working on that. And there you have it, he's all done. And we're now going to mount him onto a piece of wood just to turn him into a hanging decoration. You could alternatively put him in a frame or mount him on a piece of felt, whatever you want to do. But we're going to use this piece of wood. Just trying him for size there, make sure he fits. So I'm using a bit of crochet lace to hang him by. And we're just going to, trying him on for size again, just see if that's in the right position. It's looking good. Just fussing again, always fussing, always things to trim, always fibres to needle down. I'm never happy. Right, so I'm just going to put that back in position and take a stapler And I'm just going to put a staple through the ends of each of these. It goes through the wood really easily. And that's just going to secure them in place. I did think about just using the glue, but I didn't want the glue to dry out and have that snap off at some point. So just put those little staples in just for a bit of security. And both the wood slice and the barn owl are really light, so it doesn't take much to hold them. And then I'm just using this Bostik all-purpose glue and giving it a good coat behind the ribbon and then all over the front. You really don't need a huge amount of glue for this. This particular glue is really strong once it dries, but you do have a little bit of leeway with it. It's not a super fast drying glue, so if something isn't quite right, you can usually peel it off and reposition it before it dries. And just make sure you go over the tops of those pieces of ribbon as well, because we want it to stick to the owl. Now, one thing about this glue is it is quite stringy. You can see it's sticking to my fingers there. And then just pop Mr. Barn Owl nice and central and just push him down. Make sure that he's all stuck down all the way down to the centre. And I'm fussing again, making sure all those fibres are splayed out in the right direction. Fuss, fuss, fuss. And there he is, all finished. I really hope you like this tutorial. If you've made it this far, please leave me a comment, even if it's just a thumbs up. Any comment really helps me with the algorithm. Please also like the video, and if you'd like to see more of this, subscribe to my channel. It's completely free. Thank you so much. Bye.